everybody, what's going on? Nexius here, and today I'm going to help you beat Fury Warriors in duels with a list of strategies I use. First, let's take a look at the build we are going to be running to beat Fury Warriors. Now, I like to run Celerity for the extra burst damage, healing, and kiting distance due to its extra charge and reduced cooldown. But sometimes, if I don't have LOS, I'll stick with Tiger's Lust, because without LOS, it makes it a lot harder to recover using Transcendence, since the warrior will be able to charge you instantly, since there's no LOS blocking his charge. Because of that, sometimes Tiger's Lust will be better than Celerity, but either way, it's up to you if you want Celerity or Tiger's Lust. It's based on your playstyle. Besides making the choice to opt for Celerity instead of Tiger's Lust, the rest of our talents should remain unchanged from the regular build of Chi Burst, Chi Brew, Leg Sweep, Healing Elixirs, Chi Torpedo, and Chi Explosion. When it comes to glyph choices, however, this is where I get a little excited, because this is the perfect opportunity to use some glyphs that are normally never used in this game. For the first glyph, obviously you want Touch of Death. Since Warrior is a melee class, you can afford to replace Touch of Karma with something else, giving you 2 glyph slots in total to choose whatever you would like. For the second glyph slot, I recommend Fists of Fury. Yeah, you heard that right, Fists of Fury, not Flying Fists, Fists of Fury. Not the glyph that gives you 5 range, guys. I'm talking about the glyph that gives you 100% parry chance while channeling Fist of Fury. I like to use this glyph against warriors because the stun is usually DR'd by a leg sweep, making the warrior able to attack you while you're still channeling your Fist of Fury. I really don't want to cancel that, and there's a good chance they will unload a bunch of bursts into you, so I like to run the Fist of Fury glyph because it gives you all of that parry chance. Especially considering if the warrior isn't paying attention and you're still channeling Fist of Fury, the warrior could end up getting parried a lot on some of his big attacks. He could end up wasting Bloodthirst on you, he could end up basically wasting his charges from Wild Strike and Raging Blow. Overall, it's going to help with reducing your damage taken as well as blocking some of his self-healing through Bloodthirst. So I really like the Fist of Fury glyph when I'm facing Fury specifically. For the final glyph slot, you have a choice between Transcendence, Freedom Roll, and Paralysis. The Transcendence glyph will reduce the cooldown of Transcendence by 5 seconds, giving you more opportunities to transfer behind LOS to either heal or avoid major cooldowns like Recklessness. The more you can transfer, the higher you are going to be ahead, or the more you are going to be ahead of that warrior, since you get extra time to heal. However, if there's no LOS, the Freedom Roll glyph will remove any slows on you, which can be very useful if you're trying to kite away to get some healing off. We're very reliant on Transcendence and kiting in general in order to keep up with warriors, so this glyph can be very useful. If there's LOS, I like to use the Transcendence glyph. If there isn't LOS, such as an Elwyn Endurotar, which is most of the cases, I like to run the Freedom Roll glyph to help me kite better through Chi Torpedo. Paralysis will also remove dots on the warrior if you choose to glyph it, ensuring that it won't break early, which will allow you to get some extra time to cast a heal or two, or to use anything else really. However, just keep in mind that Paralysis can be removed by Berserker Rage, so overall, in my opinion, Paralysis glyph isn't really useful. I prefer to stick to either Freedom Roll or Transcendence as the third glyph. So now that we've covered our build against warriors, let's take a look at the warriors toolkit so we can understand how they work and develop a strategy to counteract them. For mobility, Fury relies on charge and heroic leap. If you need to kite to heal, try to bait their charge with a Chi Torpedo or 2, or even just running if you can, since they will be slowed. If they end up charging, you can then Tiger's Lust out of the route, unless you're stunned by Warbringer, which is a talent that they pick. Otherwise, either way, as soon as that charge is over, you can choose to Tiger's Lust or Flying Serpent Kick out for the extra distance. Just make sure to bait with a Chi Torpedo if you can, since it will be terrible if they charge your Flying Serpent Kick. Also remember to keep them snared with Disable when you're kiting. Also keep in mind as well that charge gives them a lot of rage and will even stun you if they're talented into Warbringer. At the start of duels, I like to stand on top of them so they can't charge me right at the start of the fight. Usually when I do this, they will Heroic Leap into a charge, which gives you at least 45 seconds of kiting and healing, knowing very well that Heroic Leap is on cooldown. So it will help you early in the match to get that kiting off, whereas otherwise if they charge you right away, the stun will affect you a lot. They'll get a lot of early pressure, and on top of that, early extra rage. And of course, they will still have Heroic Leap if you try to kite. So by trying to stand on them right away, this will reduce their offensive play immediately at the start. On top of that, it will also be useful to use Paralysis on them if they get a little bit of distance on you at that start of the fight. If you don't stop it, they will get extra rage from the charge, they won't waste their Heroic Leap cooldown, and on top of that, that stun, if they're in Warbringer, the Warbringer talent, it will basically give them a lot of extra damage at the beginning of a fight. So stopping that first charge when the fight begins is extremely important. For CC, Fury normally talents into Stormbolt, which is a 3-second stun on a 30-second cooldown. This is the only ability you want to trinket. I will usually trinket this if they pop any offensive cooldowns right after the Stormbolt, or if I'm in serious danger and need to run immediately. If I have my trinkets up and I know I'm going to win after trinketing that Stormbolt, I'll usually trinket that Stormbolt there. They also have Intimidating Shout, which isn't that big of a deal. It will usually break when you take damage, which makes it better to save your trinkets for Stormbolt, as I stated. In most cases, Fury will talent into Siegebreaker, which replaces Intimidating Shout anyway, so really the only CC you have to worry about is Stormbolt. You should also watch out for Charge, since it can root or stun you depending if they're talented into Warbringer. It's not worth trinketing it in my opinion, but it's still good to watch out for, and keep in mind that if you try to kite him, he may stun you with that charge. For cooldowns, warriors surprisingly have a lot of them. Baseline, they will have Rallying Cry, Die by the Sword, Recklessness, and that's pretty much it. In terms of talents, they will have the choice of either Bladestorm or Avatar, totaling their cooldown count to 4. If you see any of these, you'll want to kite an LOS as much as you can. If LOS is available, I usually Transcendence behind it and kite around that pillar until the cooldown ends. I always save Touch of Karma for Recklessness unless I'm forced to use it to stay alive. As for Rallying Cry, you only need to kite this during its effect if the warrior is glyphed for it. The glyph gives them a significant leech increase, which allows them to heal for a significant amount through their damage dealt. However, if they are not running the Rallying Cry glyph, you don't really need to kite at all. Watch out for Execute. If you drop 2 or below 20% health, it's pretty much a loss. The warrior can kill you in 1 or 2 executes. So simply put, just make sure to stay above 20% health at all times. Otherwise, like I stated, you are going to be 2-shotted below that. Wild Strike and Raging Blow can accumulate multiple charges that allow those abilities to be free of cost. Keep an eye on the charges of these two abilities in their buff bar. If you see the warrior storing charges, there's a good chance they're waiting to pop their Swifty macro and one-shot you through them with a Stormbolt. Usually when I get Stormbolted, I'll quickly check their charge count and prepare to trinket and karma the moment I see Recklessness activated. And finally, they have Shield Barrier. If you can put enough pressure on Fury, they will spend their rage through Shield Barrier instead of damage through Wild Strike. One more thing I should show you guys here is that most Fury Warriors will not run this build, but if they do run this build, it's pretty much impossible to beat them for 2 reasons. One, if there's no LOS, the warrior can be on you the entire time. The longer the warrior's on you, the more healing they get out of Bloodthirst and Rallying Cry. The less that you can get away from them, which is no LOS, the less you will be able to out-heal any of his damage. So because of that, with no LOS, you heal less and he heals more. So because of that, the Fury Warrior ends up coming on top, making it almost impossible to beat them. That's only if they are running this self-healing build, and this self-healing build consists of Unquenchable Thirst, Glyph of Bloodthirst, and Glyph of Rallying Cry. So if you guys see a warrior running this, it's going to be really difficult to beat them if there's no LOS. Just to keep in mind there, Destrey is the first warrior I've encountered in this expansion that has actually run this build, and I just couldn't beat him. So eventually when we dueled again, which you guys will see in a second here, we moved to a place with LOS, and I was eventually able to beat him because I had that recovery time to heal almost as much as him. So our strategy is quite simple. Warriors rely on dealing damage in order to heal, whereas we can just self-heal on our own, so we're able to use that advantage by using our mobility to kite, so the warrior can't heal off us since he's not doing damage, and we can sit there and heal until he catches back up to us. When major cooldowns are used, we will go full defensive, not doing any damage at all, and instead escaping as far as we can, using that time to heal ourselves while the warrior tries to catch up, both not receiving any healing and wasting their cooldown in the process. So basically by running away when their cooldowns are up, we can heal ourselves during that time, and they can't get any healing off since they're not damaging us, and the cooldowns are going to waste. So kiting is very important, and getting away during cooldowns is also very important. So now that we've learned the Fury toolkit and have developed a build and strategy to counter it, let's get into some gameplay and see how our strategy can be put to the test. So the first thing I like to do here is get right on top of him. Since I couldn't get on top of him, I used Paralysis. That way he couldn't charge. So as you can see, he wasn't able to charge me. Now usually you can bait a Heroic Leap into a charge, but he was smart this duel and he didn't waste his Heroic Leap. Now what I'm doing next here is I'm trying to put as much pressure out as I can, while on top of that trying to top myself off to healing. Now the way I did that is by using healing elixirs with a Chi Brew, and of course I used my Chi Torpedoes early with some brew, that way I can get that healing back up. So he got some early damage off with Siegebreaker, so I'm trying to recover through that. Now I see him storing up some charges, so I'm expecting a Recklessness here, so I'm getting prepared to trinket for his Stormbolt, which is coming up right now. He doesn't use Recklessness, so I don't bother trinketing. I'm okay with this, and I continue on with my pressure, and I'm about to Fist of Fury with some burst, as I can see here. I do have my burst, so I'm going to force a defensive here. So right here, I'm getting prepared to run away. Now, this is where the parry glyph from Fist of Fury was useful, because he got out of that stun early, and he started to damage me, but he couldn't because I had a 100% parry chance. I saw the die by the sword, so I immediately poured it behind LOS, and now I can cut him around and top myself off while he cannot heal since he's not doing any damage. Warrior's self-healing is reliant on Bloodthirst, which is damage. Now, he's going to pop his cooldowns here in a second, which I'm immediately going to Karma there. I heard the Recklessness, so I immediately Karma. He has Blade Storm still, but it doesn't matter because he's going to use it in Karma by accident. I'm pretty sure it's an accident, as you can see. Actually, no, I think he was using it to get away, to kite. And that's what a lot of warriors like to do. They sometimes will use Blade Storm to get away, since it removes your slowing effects. And eventually I'll just finish off the duel. So with LOS, Fury Warrior should be quite easy to deal with, but without LOS, it's a lot more difficult. The way Destrey's build works is basically, the more he's on you, the more he can heal between the Bloodthirst glyph, the Rallying Cry glyph, and then Bloodthirst not having a cooldown. His healing is extremely difficult to damage through, because he also takes a lot of reduced damage through defensive stance and shield barrier. So it's really hard to actually put pressure on the warrior. If you cannot put pressure on the warrior, he's eventually going to come on top. And the way you put pressure on the warrior is by staying away from him as much as possible. By doing that, you can catch yourself up and he can't heal off his damage. So that's basically the general guide when it comes to facing a warrior. Try and stay away from him as possible while jumping in and out, which is basically the regular Windwalker gameplay. You want to jump in and out as much as you can, and you want to try and recover when you're out, and you want to make sure they can't do anything when they're out as well. So that's the downside to playing a warrior, is they have to rely on their damage in order to actually heal, and if the Windwalker is constantly kiting and getting away, it's kind of hard for them to heal. So overall, I hope you guys enjoyed this guide, and thanks for watching, guys. If you have any questions, don't be afraid to leave a comment down below, and I'll see you guys on my next video. See ya.